Just checking the streams. We're live on Twitch. And we're just waiting for YouTube. And it looks like we're live on YouTube. There we go. Just check the microphone.
Are we
just
good?
checking the streams. Well, okay, we're good. So welcome to Volume 9. We're getting there towards our first 100. And today we're going to look at checklists as actually a risk methodology. So as you already know, we've been we have been looking at this document recently. It's the American Bureau of Shipping Risk Assessment Applications for the Marine and Offshore Industry. And I'm finding it's actually a really great document. And in it, it's got risk management methodology and risk assessment techniques, amongst other things, which we've been going through. So last night we had a look at the bow tie risk assessment technique, which is a way of trying to identify all the different factors which could lead to a harm occurring. And today what we're going to do is, and let me just zoom in, we're going to have a look at the checklist analysis. Now, we all know that checklists are useful, but it might be interesting to take a look at what how can I say, the experts view checklists and the rationale for it and how to formally use it. So which is what we're going to do today. And let me just jump into it. I've got the page open here. So we're in section 2.2, checklist analysis. Oh, excuse me, it's getting late. Apologies. Right. So we're going to read through this quickly. Checklist analysis is a systematic evaluation using pre-established criteria. So I think that is probably the important bit. In the form of one or more checklists. It's applicable for high-level or detailed level analysis and is used primarily to provide structure for interviews, documentation reviews, and field inspections of the system being analyzed. So here again, this is looking at risk assessment of a boat. We generally have operational checklists, but there's no reason why on our boats we can't do risk assessment checklists. So the technique generates qualitative lists of conformances and non-conformance determinations with recommendations for correcting non-conformances. So basically that means you either comply or not comply, and if there are gaps, how you correct those things you don't comply with. Checklist analysis is frequently used as a supplement to or integral part of another method, especially what-if analysis to address specific requirements. Right. We'll ignore that one today. We're just going to look at checklists by themselves. Section 2, Table 3 below is an example of a portion of a checklist analysis of a vessel's compressed air system. So let's take a quick look here. What have we got? Table 3, checklist analysis example. Responses to checklist questions for the vessel's compressed air system. Questions, responses, recommendation. So if anybody's ever done any auditing or ever been audited, often auditors have these checklists when they're auditing part of your quality system, your financial statements, whatever it could be. So this is a very similar approach. So piping, have thermal relief valves been installed in piping runs, e.g. cargo loading, unloading lines where thermal expansion of trapped fluid would separate flanges or damage gaskets? Got the room here for the answers. Not applicable. Cargo tanks, is a vacuum relief system needed to protect the vessel's cargo tanks during liquid withdrawal? Yes, the cargo tanks will be damaged if vacuum release is not provided. A vacuum release system is installed on each cargo tank. Are air compressor intakes protected against contaminants, rains, birds, flammable gas, etc.? Yes, except for intake of flammable gases, there is a nearby cargo tank vent. Consider routing the cargo tank vent to a different location as part of the recommendation. So this is possibly a very different type of checklist than what we, well, at least generally have on our private boats, which are more operational. However, that said, once we build out our checklist module, there's no reason why we can't install into Yacht Prep these sort of risk assessment checklists, so owners can get a better understanding of maybe what they should be doing to make their boat safer. So the purpose traditional checklist analysis is used to identify known types of hazards, potential accident situations, and design deficiencies. I think here a critical point is to identify known hazards, which may be a bit different from some of the other techniques, which do require some creativity to come up with scenarios and identify hazards. So here you know the hazards and you know how to check them. The checklist will also confirm that the equipment and processes conform with accepted standards and will identify areas which may require further evaluation. So for example, we could say that potentially one of the accepted standards could be an ISO standards for the life raft, which can I remember what that is? So this is my life raft certificate for my boat. And what have we got? ISO 19650 group. So yeah, there we go. So ISO 19650 is one of the life raft ISOs. Yep, so that's my certificate, but fine. Okay. And we'll identify areas which may require further evaluation, which we saw on their checklist. Inputs, information, expertise on the project's operations design and equipment are needed to perform this analysis. So information and expertise on the project's operations, design, equipment are needed to perform this analysis. Okay, that's fair enough. You need to know what you're looking at. A relevant and validated checklist should be used or developed by the risk study team. Procedure, scoping the assessment, identify the physical boundaries for the system and or operational activities be analyzed. Identify the problems of interest for the analysis, collect information, select the system or activity to break into major elements, select or develop. Okay, so we'll go into here. We could speak a long time about this. We won't, but more or less you need to have system boundaries. So where do you draw that system? So, you know, if you're looking at an engine, are you going to include the whole fuel system from the fuel tank into the engine, or are you just going to start it at the actual where the engine, the barrier between the fuel lines and the engine? Same with the water cooling, same with the exhaust, you know, same with the gearbox. So work out your boundary that you are testing. Outputs. So the outputs include a table summarizing responses, a report outlining the analysis. Oh, excuse me. Oh, I'm sorry. It's been a long week. Now we got the reference. So this is the main ISO for risk management. It's in there. And we also have another one here, which is for chemical process safety, which is not really relevant for us as leisure boaters. So really not a lot in this, but today what we're going to do is go back to this report, which was a collision between a 26-meter fishing boat and a roughly 6-meter fiberglass motor cruiser, outboard motor cruiser, and this is the motor cruiser here with the light map on it, where they didn't have their 360-degree white light on top, which was required under coal regs for a boat of that size. Now, potentially, if they did have a checklist on board, they could have at least identified it. Now, there's a big difference between identifying a deficiency and fixing that deficiency. So that's a completely separate question. But for us who are hopefully responsible boaters, we would identify it and fix it and not go out to sea at night. So one of the interesting things too is, let me just get chat GPT here. Okay, so we're going to ask, is there an official coal regs checklist for private boaters to ensure their lights are compliant? Let's just ask that. So that was one of the recommendations from the thing. So not really, there doesn't appear to be an official one. Official requirements are spread across coal reg rules 20 to 31, rule 22 required visibility ranges, annex 1 detailed engineering requirements, national implementation guidance, UK MCA guidance, specifically there is something quite close. Well, UK MCA's MSIS 10 survey of lights and signalling equipment. It's an official inspection survey guide covering navigation lights and signalling equipment. And it's intended for surveyors, ship owners, masters, skippers, shipbuilders, and manufacturers. Updated July 2026, which is actually only a couple of months ago. So let's take a look at this one and see if this is useful. Right, so we've got 41 pages here. Instruction for the guidance of surveyors on survey of light and signaling equipment. Let me just zoom in a bit. If you're watching, you can see it. Right, forward, general, surveys, reports and fees. Here we go, page 12, lights and shapes, general requirements for acceptance and approval. Provisions of lights on board, electrical systems, sound signals, visual signaling apparatus, signaling lamps, unified interpretation, is that a spelling mistake? On positioning of navigation lights and screening of navigation lights, positioning of navigation lights as required by Colreg's checklist for surveyors. That's on page 35. So let's just have a quick look at page 12. What do we got here? Design of lights, all-round lights. Okay. Duplication, navigation lights, exemptions. We go, okay, so let's go down to see if we can find the checklist. Here we go. Right, positioning of lights. So here we have our boat. If you can see that, there's a lot of lines. I'm sorry, what's... I apologize, I live in the middle of nowhere and there's horns going outside the window, which is kind of strange. Waterline, maximum trim, 1,000 meters, length overall, okay. So the checklist, masthead, light, forward, rule 23, vessels, 20 or more meters in length. So these are all large ships, as you can probably imagine. Okay, so what can we do here? Let's pick something. Anchor light. Okay. A, near stern, rule 30A, complies, yes, no. Not less than 4.5 meters below forward anchor light. Annex there. Okay, so this doesn't necessarily give you the requirement, but it's giving you the reference to the requirement, which is helpful, I guess. And I guess if you're working for a company or you wanted to do it on your own boat, then you could have the reference and actually the rule there. Okay, so I mean, that's interesting just to know what exists and what's checked. What could be interesting for us in future videos is to do a whole stream on lights and signals, which is pretty important. Here we go. We've got sailing vessels, optional red, green, all round lights, not less than 2 meters apart, lowest not less than 4 meters above hull, not less than 2 meters above hull, less than 20 meters, all round obstruction, not more than 6 degrees, aft or near top of mast. Fishing lights, maneuvering, towing. Okay. Potentially interesting document, probably requires a little bit more looking into it. But yeah, a lot of information there. Okay. Wow, okay. I will. This looks pretty good, actually. I'm going to have a bit of a read of this at some point. And we'll work out. But I think that's enough for today. So, what I've done in Yacht Prep is actually develop a checklist. Now, again, this is an operational checklist. It's more of a to work out if your lights are actually working. It assumes compliance, but it will also identify if there are gaps in compliance. So what's this one here? Navigation lights pre-departure checklist. I might have to zoom in a bit. Let me see. There we go. Hopefully you can see that. So the way the checklists work here are, these are templates, and basically it's completely reusable. So we'll go through it quickly and we'll do just like a sample run to see how it works. But the philosophy generally is you turn everything on. So turn on your stern navigation light, and there you've got the instruction, turn stern navigation light, switch to on position, turn on starboard navigation light, port, masthead light, anchor light. And so then you've got everything on. Now, obviously you want to do it when you are in port, for example, in the marina. Otherwise, you may want to sequence differently. If you're anchored, you may want to check that first and then turn it off and then turn your navigation lights on. It shouldn't matter too much, but you never know. So then we've got turn on the anchor light, stern navigation light, illumination, sorry, turn everything on. Then we do the illumination check. So basically to go outside, walk around your boat and identify if the lights are working. So is your stern navigation light working, starboard working, port working, masthead working, anchor light working, and then go turn off your anchor light, turn on the searchlight, and searchlight, turn searchlight off. Okay, so we do a searchlight check as well. And you'll notice here on this one, this is a pre-departure. So we're assuming you're going to navigate with your navigation lights on. So that's why we're checking the anchor light works, just in case you need it. But we turn that one off, and basically you're left with your navigation lights. Right. So that's it. And the way we would run that is run that. Now here, you can actually just, if you have a previous run, for whatever reason you get interrupted, you can run it, continue it. You can run ad hoc, that just stores it against an ad hoc period. You can assign to an attached existing period. A period is obviously a period of time, but with a purpose. So if you set up a voyage you're doing, then you could assign it to a voyage, or you could create a new period. So in this case, I'm just going to run ad hoc, confirm it. And here we go. So basically we just click on it and we work through it step by step. So step one, turn on stern navigation light. So we turn it to the on position, and you can see here that it automatically updated. So it's got a formula engine behind, and actually what you can see here, this is actually the component on the boat where which is being updated as we do it. So we've got the stern navigation light and then the light switch position of that. So that's the actual, the component, and then that's an attribute associated with it. So we've got the automatic expected to be on, selected was on, so it's passed, so we can pass it. Starboard navigation light, light switch position. So for example, we just say off, expected on, selected off. So we've actually failed this test, but in this case, we'll set it to on and it's passed. Then we go port navigation light. So we're going to turn it on, expected to be on, so we can pass that one too. Masthead light, turn it on, right. So everything's on. Anchor light, turning it on, we pass that one. Stern navigation illumination check. Now, here we've actually got 3 values. So on is the illumination status, so that's what we're looking at here. Is the bulb illuminated? And if it is on, then we select on. If it's off, we do also have an off option here, and that would be used, for example, if you expect it to be off and it is off. But however, in this case, we expect it to be on because the light switch is on and the bulb is not working, for example, then we could select defective. Now, defective is a readiness criteria whereby we can, we've now identified a defect in the boat, and we'll go to the readiness dashboard in a second, and we'll be able to see that defect clearly labeled for us. So when we look at what needs to be done on the boat, we can clearly see that we need to fix the stern navigation light. And that's failed, so yep, we'll fail it. Starboard, so let's assume all of these pass again. Port on, there we go. Masthead light, anchor light, let's assume that's working. Okay, so now we need to turn it off again, right? Searchlight, we'll turn it on, and let's assume it turns on again, and now we need to turn it off, so we'll turn it off. And we've now run through the checklist, so it doesn't take too long. And here we can see that we have one pass, the fail, the stern navigation light illumination check has passed. And I'll just show you a couple more things here. We've got a few speed problems at the moment, which I'm in the process of fixing. But today is Sunday, the 23rd of August. And what we can do is, let's just summarize it a bit. We scroll down to the light. So here you can actually see against the components. So that's the anchor light, that's the illumination status attribute. And you can see we've had checks here before, so you can see all the time it's been checked and not checked, all the times you've run it. So if you're doing a lot of night trips, you would expect sort of a pattern like this. And here we can see the current status is, well, on green, so it's passed the test. However, here we can see that the stern navigation light is defective. So we've actually got a defect that's visible. Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. And then if we summarize on the, just show all the critical ones, the things that need work, you can see here it appears in that defective section. And the other one too, for people who haven't seen this before, what we actually have here is the systems. So basically in yacht prep, you can recreate all your systems of your yacht and put in as much detail as you need to put. So one thing we're looking at here is we have a navigation section, and here these are all the navigation components: radar, searchlight, etc. We've got the navigation lights, and here you can see that these are all the ones we've checked: anchor light, masthead light, port navigation light, starboard, stern, etc. Then you can see here that the port navigation light is showing red with a defect. And we can click on that. And if we come down here, Oh, okay, so this is interesting. Yeah, we've got this defect here. Okay, so interesting. You can see that the illumination status is still on because we haven't turned it off. Light switch position is on. And we can see here that we've got the out of service on it because it's in a defective state. So as you can see, everything here is connected. The checklist connects through to all the documents, sorry, to all the systems on the boat. And then basically you can view it in a bunch of different ways, which makes it easy for you to track what's going on. And the key one to look at there is the readiness dashboard. Um, so I guess the point then, what we're getting to is checklists are super useful, and apologies for saying this over and over again. Even the most experienced, knowledgeable skippers, captains can forget because we're all human. So one of the most powerful techniques we can do when we're running our boats is to have that knowledge and that experience, know how to do things, but always being backed up by a checklist so we just never forget. Because we just never want to be in that position where we know something breaks and we go, oh, we forgot, right? And that can ruin your day on the water. The checklists are great, especially checklists in this sort of format, with yacht prep, or if you can find another one uh, where you can edit it, you can update it, you can learn, and you can continue to improve your checklists as you go, as you sort of proceed with time, or proceed with time, yeah, as well as you learn, basically. Right. Um, 1 second. I'm just, yeah, okay. So in this case, we'll do one more thing. We'll have a pretty short one tonight, I think. But the use case we did, okay. Right, okay. So we actually did some case studies. We did some risk hazardous situations in our risk list based on the collision between the James II and the Vertrauen. And what we've got so far is that the boat was hit by a large wake wave. The outboard cutout was on the transom was not done, so the wave sunk the boat. So that's not a visibility hazard situation. Here we go. Boat is navigating offshore and crew are not wearing flotation devices. Fishing boat approaching with no watch active. Boat has right of way but does not take evasive maneuvers or attempt to alert. Boats collide. And this is from the other side. So we actually haven't done the case study of actually with the defective navigation light. So that might be a good one to do now. So here we've got our hazard categories here and our source. We're going to do, this is the category we want. So collision and performance. So basically a collision occurred, that's a hazard category, but the source or the reason for the collision is performance. So this is performance of equipment on board, so a failure. So what we'll do here, I'm just going to insert another row above, and we'll do collision and then performance and the use situation context. And what we can actually do here is look at the report and work out what the MAIB said about the weather at the time. So we've got the, let's just go environmental conditions. Okay, 6th of August, Sussex Bay, northwesterly in a direction of 5 knots. So that's slightly offshore at 5 knots, which is not a strong wind. by any stretch. A low swell from the southwest. Weather was fine with a clear sky, nearly full moon. Okay. Water temperature was 16 degrees. So it's a pretty clear night, pretty calm weather. So we got wind, sea was slight with a low swell from southwest. Weather was fine with a clear sky and nearly a full moon. So it's pretty bright out, pretty calm. And the water temperature, oops, wrong one, was 16 degrees. So we're going to work out what the survival time is in 16 degrees of water. What is the survival time in water temperature of 16 degrees in with no protective clothing? So loss of useful dexterity, which is your fingers, the control of being able to hold on to things, for example, 30 to 40 minutes, which usually that's, well, it's obviously important at all times, but it's most critical once you first go in the water to see if you can climb back into a life raft or help other people or, you know, these sort of things. So 30 to 40 minutes, assuming you got a life raft or there's help there, that's actually a pretty reasonably generous time before you lose control of your fingers. Exhaustion, unconsciousness, broadly 2 to 7 hours. So likely survival with flotation, 4 to 17 hours, which is a massive difference. So the exhaustion, unconsciousness is you're not dead, you're just lost consciousness, as it says. But survival, or the other side of survival, is obviously death, is a 4 to 17 hours. And in the case study we saw here, the boat collision happened at about midnight, a bit after midnight, and of the 4 people who ended up in the water, three died sadly, but the 4th was found at dawn when a fishing boat was out collecting its nets. So that actually supports these numbers coincide with the experience we can see with the MAIB. So so again, you know, we cover this all the time. That is one of the reasons why we put the use situation, the context, the environment into the into the risk analysis, because you could have the same sequence of events leading to a harm, but the environment can really radically change the outcome. So again, here it's pretty mild conditions, but if you were to make it a, I don't know, a 30 knot breeze, big swell with, you know, breaking sea, 5-degree water temperature, for example, with cloudy overcast, it's a completely different survival situation. So right, I'll do this from memory. If you want the report, you can look it up or just let me know. Actually, let me just pop it in the chat again. So if you want to read it, you can find it. MAIB report. There you go, it's in the chat. So what we'll do again, just to recap on how this works, we categorize the hazards, and a hazard is a potential source of harm, not a harm. Just because a hazard exists doesn't mean it's going to cause any harm, which is the whole point of risk management. Boats are really quite inherently hazardous, but a lot of us go out there time and time again and don't get hurt or harmed, so that's good. Use situation, the context, we did that, and the sequence of events which lead to the hazardous situation. So here, the hazardous situation causes a collision. I will preempt it. We have crew in the water. I'm not going to mention, because a lot of these can be very compounding. You get a lot of factors. I'm just going to stop with the crew in the water. In this case, they were in the water. They didn't have life jackets. They didn't have signaling equipment. They didn't have life rafts, right? There's a whole bunch of other things here. And when you actually look at the full chain of events, so this row is like one sequence of events, but if you look at the full chain of sequence events, you can actually break them down into sort of critical points and analyze them individually, and also then come back together and bring them together and see them as a full chain. So the crew in the water, uh, crew in the water. I am just going to leave it that. So that's actually a man overboard situation. So the crew in the water is the hazardous situation, and we'll come back to the harm, although I'm tempted to do it now because we said it. So the harm here could be hypothermia, drowning. So that would be the, hypothermia, drowning, I don't know, potentially injury, let's say. So yeah, they're the three harms. And then we go into the sequence of events. So we have one boat launches with missing 360-degree white light as required by coal regs. So that's the start. Two, approaching fishing boat does not see, that's badly worded. So we can say boat is not seen by approaching fishing boat. And again, on the fishing boat in this one, apparently the watchkeeper was on social media, so wasn't actually keeping watch. So, but let's assume they are keeping watch. Boat launches with missing 360-degree white light. Boat is not seen by approaching fishing boat. Boats collide. And then we go boat sinks and trawler continues unaware that they were part of a collision, which is basically what happened. I'm not sure I'm spelling that right, apologies. Which is basically what happened in the MAIB report, we can see. So here then we got crew in the water, man overboard, and that's the unmitigated harm and consequences. So here, again, we have to do the risk assessment. What's the severity and the probability? We'll do the severity first. So severity here is we've got potential death from drowning. So we're already in the catastrophic one. And then, hypothermia here, we've got like a medical intervention. So that would be severe to catastrophic. So I'll just pick the highest for this one, catastrophic. And then the unmitigated probability, again, in this situation, they were off the south coast at midnight. So it's a pretty busy area, if anybody knows it. I've sailed in that area before, not exactly this bit of coast. Right, so apologies. So it's somewhere, where is it? I want to say it's somewhere, it's Hastings, no, we're too far. Here, a Sea Haven, no, it's not there. Shoreham, okay, so it's here. Shoreham by Sea. So they're about a mile out here. So they're kind of still in the bay, but we do have an entrance to a river there with, like some port facilities, or maybe not port facilities, but there is a marina and a lock. Oh yeah, it looks like we've got some port facilities here. So you can expect, maybe not passing traffic going through the channel, but you've got things coming in and out here. and I've sailed from somewhere around here, not Southampton, but close to it, to Cherbourg, around this way. And I've been further up the coast, but I've never actually sailed through this section, not yet. One day, hopefully. So again, on the probability, the question is, how do we assess that probability? And we're going to use our qualitative assessment. Would we say it's almost certain? I would say no. Is it likely? Probably not, if everybody's doing the right thing, especially with radar and modern equipment. Is it unlikely? I would probably say no. Is it possible? Which means could reasonably occur. I would say yes. So I'm going to give it a possible on the risk list. And then the unmitigated risk assessment, we are going to say, so we've got a possible and a moderate, sorry, a possible and a catastrophic, so that's unacceptable, as you can expect. And again, the test is, would you accept that probability for your, if it was you on there? So the risk control here, so okay, obviously we can do multiple ones. So the one is ensure all navigation lights required by coal regs are installed and working, right? So that's number one, and that's the obvious one from this. And from the checklist we just went through, then, if you run that every time, you're working and you're good to go, right? However, nowadays there are a lot more. To avoid collision, keep watch on approaching traffic. Potentially keep a white flare at hand in case of approaching boat. AIS that transmits and receives. And to be honest, this is probably one of the better controls to have, to make sure you're electronically visible. That'll get you all of the commercial traffic. They'll know where you are. And then you're potentially only dealing with a limited number of private boats that don't have AIS on the boat. And I've mentioned this before. I had an AIS receiver, but I didn't have an AIS transmitter. It was on an older boat, and I nearly got run down in approaching the coast of Holland at about 3 in the morning by some sort of pilot boat, which wasn't a pleasant experience. So for me, I will never go to sea again without an AIS transmitter. So my bad, but thank God, live and learn. Then we've got, radar with proximity warnings. And look, even today with these AI overlay cameras, they're really powerful. So with AI overlay cameras, with night vision, or if you just want to have a FLIR camera, if you can afford it. And a lot of this equipment, these AI cameras, I believe they're about somewhere between 10 to 20 grand now. I'm pretty sure they'll come down in price. I had a Raymarine rear looking camera. It wasn't a night vision camera. That was still about, I think about $1,000 or $2,000 when I bought it. So it was still pretty expensive. So FLIR, so now we're up into some pretty expensive stuff. But I would say lights working, definitely keep a watch, keep some sort of signaling device on hand, keep white flare and VHF at hand, channel 16. So you can put out a call on channel 16 if you think you're going to be hit. So all of these are all the way up to the flares and the VHF. This is all pretty basic stuff, and you should have the equipment on the boat. The AIS that transmits and receive, I'm not going to say it's expensive, but it's not necessarily cheap. But that, I think, is really the one that will save you, because even the fishing boats should see that. And then, all the other ones, the radar with proximity. If you're going to sea, you should have a radar, even on a little fishing boat, it get one if you can. And all the rest, the night vision and the AI overlay as well. If you got the money, go for it. But, with 20 grand, there's a lot of nice toys you can buy, right? So here, then the question becomes, what is these are the mitigations we've put in place. So is our severity any less? Well, if you do get hit, the severity is going to be exactly the same. It's a man overboard event, people in the water, you're still going to have the possibility of hypothermia, drowning, and injury. So in this case, the severity is the same, but the probability is changed radically here. So the probability of the occurrence of harm is, first we said it was possible. Oh, excuse me. Now, is it unlikely? Possible, but not expected during normal operation. I would say if you've got all that equipment on board, it should not be possible to get hit. I think we're sitting in the rare situation. It could occur, but only in exceptional circumstances. So I'm going to assign this a rare. And if we look at our risk assessment matrix, then we've got rare and catastrophic. It's in the tolerable, which is borderline, but unfortunately, there are a lot of events which could kill us on the water. So, the best we can do in most cases is to reduce the probability of their occurrence, which is actually a lot of our risk mitigation techniques, whether you're on the top of a mast and you could fall and really bad injure yourself or die, collision, you name it. We actually deal with a lot of, like, a really lot of potential hurt and harm, yet a lot of us do it safely. And that's because we mitigate the risk away. So it's very, very rare that will occur, which is the right way to do it. So that's it for tonight. A bit of a look at checklists, dive into navigation lights. Again, we've added another another list. So we're up to 9 risks after 9 streams, which is great. So we'll just keep going. We'll build this list out. So thanks very much who watched and those who dropped in during the stream, and we'll see